Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7 by 7. So let's start off our conversation about the three-part Act 2 climax by talking about the Resistance side of the equation. There's also going to be the whole Rose, Finn, BB-8 side of things, and then there's also going to be the Rey and Kylo Ren side of things. So we'll get to all of those in turn, but today we're going to be talking about the Resistance. And in case you were, like me, counting the number of Resistance transports that survived the assault on the Raddus and the betrayal by DJ, well, it turned out that the number is 6. So the number is 6 transports actually made it down to Crate. And I think we are actually able to count those if you are able to pause it just enough in your playback of the movie. I think I actually had 6 in my head from when I was watching the movie itself. But, you know, it's just so dynamic, all those scenes with the ships getting destroyed and the cutting back and forth and so on and so forth. But 6 is your magic number there. And watch out, because it's probably going to be a trivia question down the road someplace. And as we know by now, the whole deal was to get the Resistance to Crate, and Crate is described as being one of a number of shadow planets in the Outer Rim that doesn't appear on any charts, and it's planets like these that the Rebellion used for secret hideouts and whatnot back in the day. So that was the plan all along, and by extension, Admiral Holdo's plan was to sacrifice herself so that way all the transports could get away. And the way that she sacrificed herself, well, that turned out to be a little bit different. She was just supposed to be a distraction, but when Poe programmed in lightspeed coordinates, getting ready for Finn to say, hey, the hyperspace tracking has been turned off, go into lightspeed, well, it turned out that the calculations were still running during the mutiny and when Leia showed up and stunned him on the bridge. So while Holdo is in the bridge by herself, there's a little bing, oh, the hyperspace coordinates are ready. But in an interesting twist, the jump point is actually further behind her because she's still been traveling forward, and the jump point is actually behind the First Order fleet, which is the science behind why she's able to just turn around and go boink and go straight back through the First Order fleet. And the explanation we're given for this whole plan in the first place is that the fewer people who knew, the better, because Holdo was more interested in preserving the light and not looking like a hero. I don't know how much water that holds with me. I mean, I think she still could have said something to somebody, and yeah, there would have been a lot of gnashing of teeth and whatnot, but somebody always has to sacrifice themselves. I mean, how many ships went down with the Resistance fleet? Well, not that many, because there are only 4 in total, so there were still 2 Resistance ships that got blown up because they ran out of fuel and somebody was still on board steering them. So, you know, they could have said something, I guess, but ultimately they didn't, and maybe it would have turned out to be a mutiny anyway over the whole thing, even if she had said this is what's going to happen. I don't know, but it is rather amusing that the mutineers and the loyalists, as they're described, are trading stun blasts in the docking bay where all the transports are, and when Leia is up and around after she stuns Poe in the bridge, she goes down into that docking bay and she looks around and she's like, yeah, what's all this? And I think that if, you know, we're all fleeing in these transports when the First Order is coming after us, we all better be shooting in the same direction. And it's kind of like, just like that, the Resistance and the Resistance within the Resistance, if you will, stops. Like, it's all done there. Like, oh, General Leia's back. Okay, well, I guess it's back to business. And so just like, you know, Mom coming in and seeing what's going on and going, really? And everybody just, you know, straightens up and gets back to shipshape behavior again. That's exactly what happens when Leia arrives on the scene. And for Leia's part, when she's on the Resistance transport, she finds herself thinking about what unlikely solutions could happen and wishing for one of them to magically appear, whether it's Luke arriving with help or whether it's Inferno Squad showing up with a task force of Starhawks, which was a neat little drop in there by Jason Fry. So Inferno Squad, of course, referring back to the Christie Golden novel, which was the precursor to Battlefront 2, the video game. And Starhawks are a new kind of capital ship that were first introduced to us in the Aftermath trilogy by Chuck Wendig. So yeah, a lot of stuff getting mixed into one little moment. And of course, the solution does present itself, unlikely as anything else in the form of Admiral Holdo's suicide run. And for Holdo's part, she is on the bridge of the Radis, the emergency bridge, just thinking about Leia and how her one regret in this moment, I think, is that she's not going to be around for Leia in the months and years to come. This is the way that she thinks about it, that Leia is going to need her help in the months and years to come. And the idea that she's thinking that way, that doesn't necessarily say anything to us, but the fact that Jason Fry chooses to include that in the narrative, the idea of years to come, that does tell us a little bit, I think, about the future of this whole story, this particular saga, if you will. The fact that we're talking about years to come, I really do think that is, I hesitate to use the word confirmation, okay? So, like, let's not go there. But I think this is definitely some very interesting evidence in support of the idea that it's going to be years later when we see episode 9. It's not going to follow within 6 months or a year after the events of The Last Jedi. It's going to be multiple years, if not, as I think it might be, an entire decade potentially. And the rest of that part of the Act 2 finale is mostly as you remember it in the movie, the dramatic destruction of the Supremacy. And you can kind of see it. It flashes really quick in the movie. So you get the idea, basically, it's sort of barely imprinted on the back of your eyeball, that some additional Star Destroyers get killed in the wake of the destruction of the Supremacy. And that is verified in the Last Jedi novelization, that Star Destroyers trailing in the wake of the Supremacy are destroyed. Not all of them, but certainly a few of them at least. And so that is an amazing bit of damage, which, if you also think about it, this is a huge blow to the First Order on many bigger levels too, because as has been pointed out in the Last Jedi Incredible Cross-Sections book and in the Visual Dictionary, Snoke has not designated any sort of capital city, any capital planet for the First Order. The actual headquarters of the First Order is the Supremacy. It is its own mobile base. It has all of its means of production on it. So every bit of war material that it needs to produce, like there are no factories that it's depending on, it can run its own factories right on the ship. So everything that the First Order needed for its nominal capital was on the Supremacy. And the fact that it's now been destroyed is a major blow that's on the order of the destruction of Starkiller Base, I would say. I think if you were looking for an equivalent, it would be like dealing a death blow to Coruscant for the times of the Galactic Empire. And in a way, you could also say that it's sweet revenge for the destruction of the Hosnian system. Obviously, nothing can make that okay, and nothing could ever equate to that. But dealing a blow to the capital of the First Order, which is what the Supremacy is, well, there's an equivalency there. A little bit, at least. Anyway, that is going to do it for the video version of the podcast, and I've got a little bit more in the audio section at sw7x7.com/iTunes or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. But in the meantime, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.